Jai, Jai, Jai. Panchatattva Prabhu, are you able to lead a kirtan for our beginning?
Sure. Hare Krishna. Nam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Gurudasa Jayadvaita Swami iti namine. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami iti namine. Namaste Saraswate Devam Gauravani Pracharine Nivirsesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Privrajagacharya Astotra Sata Shri Srimad Divine Grace Shila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Privrajagacharya Astotra Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Brinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaura Premanande Haribol.
Hari Haribol. Thank you so much, Panchatattva Prabhu, and thank you to everyone for being here for Srimad Bhagavatam class with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami. It is Friday, April 5th, 2024 in New York, and tonight we're reading in third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 29, and it looks like we left off reading text number 33, so I believe we're starting tonight with 34. That's all I have in my notes anyway. So we're so glad you could be with us, Maharaj, once again. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Obeisances to you. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Also apologize for starting a little late tonight. So Kapila Dev is speaking here. Manasaitani bhutani pranamit bahumanayan Ishvaro jiva kalaya pravishto bhagavaniti. Such a perfect devotee offers respects to every living entity because he is under the firm conviction that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has entered the body of every living entity as the Supersoul or controller. A perfect devotee, as described above, does not make the mistake of thinking that because the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as Paramatma, has entered into the body of every living entity has become the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is foolishness. Suppose a person enters into a room. That does not mean that the room has become that person. Similarly, that the Supreme Lord has entered into each of the 400,000 particular types of material bodies does not mean that each of these bodies has become the Supreme Lord. Because the Supreme Lord is present, however, a pure devotee accepts each body as the temple of the Lord. And since the devotee offers respect to such temples in full knowledge, he gives respect to every living entity in relationship with the Lord. Mayavadi philosophers wrongly think that because the Supreme Person has entered the body of a poor man, the Supreme Lord has become Daridra Narayan, or poor Narayan. These are all blasphemous statements of atheists and non-devotees. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistang Stapitam Jena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Bande Hang Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavangs Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitangs Tang Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitangs Cha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Brindavaneshvari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. So Lord Kapila Dev is speaking here to his mother, and he says he's trying to make it clear that there's a distinction between the bodies of all living beings, and then understanding that the Lord is there. And Prabhupada goes to some length to help us understand without a doubt that it's not just because the Lord enters into every body that the Supreme Lord is every body. He says this is foolishness, calls it foolishness straight up. I was reminded of something I'm reading now in the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is talking about how to understand him. He tells Arjuna that thus the field of activities, knowledge, and the knowable have been summarily described by me. Only my devotees can understand this thoroughly and thus attain to my nature. So what's being offered to us in today's verse via Lord Kapila's words is helping us to understand who the Supreme Controller is, how to offer respect, as he says, in relation to the Supreme Lord. Outside of hearing of the Lord from the Lord himself or from the Lord's pure devotee, you can't understand it. In the purport to this verse I'm reading, 13:19, he says that, Prabhupada says that the only the devotees can understand this, because this knowledge is meant for understanding Krishna. That everything is meant for understanding. Every process of knowledge is meant for understanding Krishna. He says, we are being led by material consciousness. But as soon as we transfer all consciousness to Krishna's activities and realize that Krishna is everything, then we attain real knowledge. Then he says something very interesting. In other words, knowledge is nothing but the preliminary stage of understanding devotional service perfectly. So everything, Vedaischa sarvairaham eva vedyo. Krishna is the goal of all knowledge. He is everything. Anything that you know perfectly, you know in relationship, as Prabhupada's saying in today's purport, in relationship with the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, it's all foolishness, it's all ignorance, it's not knowledge. And I'm hoping to hear from Maharaj on these points, because Prabhupada really goes to town on the Daridra Narayan factor in this purport. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashtata Desatari. Well, as you said, Srila Prabhupada blasts these Mayavadis for their foolishness. And really it is. It's the idea that because God is within us, therefore we're God, is such an obvious blunder that it's amazing that people can swallow it. And not only swallow it, but revere someone who teaches it as a great saint, or even as a great saint. Or as a Vedantist. The Manasa is significant. The devotee offers respect to all living entities from within his mind. As Prabhupada pointed out in another purport, it's not that because the tiger is also a living entity, therefore the devotee embraces the tiger, but from within his mind. Or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even on the spiritual platform, he once heard in Puri, he heard a woman singing the glories of Lord Jagannath, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was so carried away with ecstasy at hearing her singing, he just began rushing toward the singer to embrace her. And his servant Govinda was there and quickly picked up on what was going on and told Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, my lord, that's a woman singing. And as soon as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard the word woman, he froze. He'd been, even I think it was mentioned that he was rushing toward her, even through some sticker bushes or something, just ignoring everything. But when he heard that word woman, he just froze and said, oh, Govinda, you saved my life. So on the spiritual platform, there's no difference between man and woman, between one living entity and another in terms of spiritual identity. But materially, these differences are there. So the devotee offers respects to everyone, not only to other devotees, but to every living being from within the mind. And then beyond the mind, as it behooves, as appropriate for everyone. Okay.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Tulsi Priya, your hand is up, yes?
Yes, Hare Krishna. Obeisances to all the devotees and to Maharaj. What Maharaj was saying reminded me of two things. One, in the Bhagavatam, I forget which canto and chapter, but they talk about it's talked about the residents of Vaikuntha flying in their airplanes with their wives and how beautiful the wives are, and that there's they take pleasure in each other's company, but there's no lust. They're just they just have beautiful relationship. And then the other example I was thinking of is that I think it was at Krishna's naming ceremony that the gopis and the gopas were throwing ghee and yogurt at each other, and their clothing became wet and you could see parts of their bodies and whatever. And they said, but because they were all pure devotees, there was no incitement of lust. So I think that's the example Maharaj is talking about, the example of in our conditioned state we can't just be indiscriminate in how we associate with other living entities. But in the spiritual state, you see they're not indiscriminate, but they're freer. They don't have those dangers to them because their minds are not focused on sense gratification. They're just focused on serving Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thanks, Tulsi Priya. Oh, Gurudas, your hand is up also.
Hare Krishna, obeisances to Maharaj and to the devotees. Maharaj, question. Can we think of this in relation to the Lord's Achintya Shakti, like inconceivable potency to reserve the right to be known by whom he chooses, and so we can't perceive his presence in the heart, but we know from Shastra that that's correct, and so we pay our obeisances to, or we respect every living entity in that way.
Well, everything's manifest by Krishna's Achintya Shakti. Everything is manifest by Krishna's Shakti, Krishna's energy, and Krishna's energies are ultimately inconceivable. So from that point of view, everything is manifest by Krishna's Achintya Shakti. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it's just it's poorly worded question. I can't really do any better right now. Thank you, Maharaj.
And Prabhin Krishna Prabhu in the chat has supplied us with the verse describing the situation of the residents of Vaikuntha. Yat sankulam haripadanati matra dishtayar vaidurya katahema mayar vimanahe yeshang brihat katikatata smita shobhimukya krishnat manang narajat adadur utsmayad yai. The inhabitants of Vaikuntha travel in their airplanes made of lapis lazuli, emerald, and gold. Although crowded by their consorts, who have large hips and beautiful smiling faces, they cannot be stimulated to passion by their mirth and beautiful charms. Thank you so much, Praveen Krishna Prabhu. Gurudas Prabhu, your hand is still up. Is that residual or new?
Just getting some exercise.
Good. Sounds healthy. All right. Tulsi Priya, would you like to read our next verse?
Yes. Wait, where are we?
We're on 35 now.
35. Hold on 1 second. Can you post it in the chat? Because I shifted windows and I can't find it now.
Sure, just a moment and I'll do that. Okay. There's that.
Okay. Bhakti yogascha maya manavya oops. Maya manavyudirita yayor ekatarenaiva purusha purusham vrajet. My dear mother, O daughter of Manu, a devotee who applies the science of devotional service and mystic yoga in this way can achieve the abode of the Supreme Person simply by that devotional service. And 1 second, get the purport up. Yeah, I was. And you said it was 35?
35, and it's quite actually, the purport is significant, so maybe we can take breaks in between each paragraph and hear from Maharaj if he has points to add.
Okay, I'll read a couple of yeah, I guess a couple of paragraphs or just the first paragraph. You can tell me when to stop.
Yeah, just read the first one
Here,
and then we'll pause.
okay, herein the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Kapiladev, perfectly explains that the mystic yoga system, consisting of 8 different kinds of yoga activities, has to be performed with the aim of coming to the perfectional stage of bhakti yoga. It is not acceptable for one to be satisfied simply by practicing the sitting postures and thinking himself complete. By meditation, one must attain the stage of devotional service. As previously described, a yogi is advised to meditate on the form of Lord Vishnu from point to point, from the ankles to the legs, to the knees, to the thighs, to the chest, to the neck, and in this way gradually up to the face and then to the ornaments. There is no question of impersonal meditation. So we were discussing this at some length, and I was reminded at previous verses, and I was reminded of that when I saw an article saying that meditation could be dangerous. And apparently there's some group that's teaching Vipassana meditation, and people are having psychotic breaks during these meditations. They have like these retreats and stuff. And I was thinking how absurd and humorous it is that not only can meditation, it's not even that it's just pointless and impossible now. It actually can harm you if you're doing the wrong kind of meditation. So it just seems that, and it's, of course, it's impersonal. I think in this particular meditation, they have you meditate on a specific body part. And I thought that's enough to make me go mad. So, but at any rate, it still seems impersonal. And so we've been given the Maha Mantra. That's the process for the age. It's been recommended. It's tried and true. And, it's safe. If nothing else, it's safe.
Thank you, Maharaj. Any points of yours at this point?
Just an observation that Prabhupada goes to such pains to trash the impersonal, the notion of the impersonal absolute being the goal of yoga. And this is necessary. Why is this even necessary? Why should he have to do that? But it becomes necessary because this impersonal orientation, this impersonal idea is so prevalent. It's like the almost default mode of certainly vague spirituality, whether you call it New Age or give it some other name. And even within mainstream religions, the same impersonal notion sometimes prevails or lurks in the background. The idea that God must ultimately have no form, no qualities, no activities, and so on. Otherwise, he would be limited. So Prabhupada has to, or really campaign against this impersonal stance. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Tulsi Priya, can you continue, or you have something?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to say, it's interesting. Maharaj says, yeah, there's this tendency towards impersonalism, but at the same time, people seemed very quick to latch on to any form of person that they can in religion. You know, in Christianity, they don't have a conception of God the Father really as a person, or any features of his personality, but there's Jesus and there's the Virgin Mary. Or in Buddhism, you know, they go, you know, they go towards the impersonalism, but then everybody has this devotion to the Buddha or the devotion to the various, you know, people in the lineage. So it seems peculiar, you know, that you know, people, they're torn between personalism and impersonalism. Anyhow. Okay, so 35, next paragraph. When by meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead in all detail, one comes to the point of love of God, that is the point of Bhakti Yoga. And at that point, he must actually render service to the Lord out of transcendental love. Anyone who practices yoga and comes to the point of devotional service can attain the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his transcendental abode. Here it is clearly stated, Purusha Purusham Vrajet. The Purusha, the living entity, goes to the Supreme Person. The Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entity are qualitatively one. Both are defined as Purusha. The quality of Purusha exists both in the Supreme Godhead and in the living entity. Purusha means enjoyer, and the spirit of enjoyment is present both in the living entity and in the Supreme Lord. The difference is that the quantity of enjoyment is not equal. The living entity cannot experience the same quantity of enjoyment as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. An analogy may be made with a rich man and a poor man. The propensity for enjoyment is present in both, but the poor man cannot enjoy in the same quantity as the rich man. When the poor man dovetails his desires with those of the rich man, however, and when there is cooperation between the poor man and the rich man, or between the big and the small man, then the enjoyment is shared equally. That is like Bhakti Yoga. Purusha Purushang Vrajet. When the living entity enters into the kingdom of God and cooperates with the Supreme Lord by giving him enjoyment, he enjoys the same facility or the same amount of pleasure as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The only thing I can think of to say about this, I'm eager to hear from Maharaj, is that sometimes Prabhupada has referred to the devotee as Krishna's dog. And we see that, like, if you go someplace where there are strays running everywhere, those dogs are very miserable. And, you know, nobody wants them around. They chase them away. They, you know, hit them with sticks or shake sticks at them. But a pet dog goes everywhere that its owner goes. And so that pet dog can enjoy on the level, you know, in the same environment of the master. But we all, you know, have this spirit of independence and we want to be independent. So in essence, we're making ourselves stray dogs who are really not wanted anywhere because all the other stray dogs are fighting for their scraps also. But if we surrender to Krishna, then Krishna takes us everywhere with him, and we serve Krishna, and Krishna loves us like his pet. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much for that. Maharaj, we'd love to hear from you if you have some points to raise here.
Not much. Purusha and Purusham. The Purusha worships the Purusham, but it's not that the Purusha worships himself, but the small Purush worships the great Purusha. And Prabhupada makes that eminently clear by his examples. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Jai. Praveen Krishna Prabhu has a question here. He quotes from the purport, "The enjoyment is shared equally," unquote. What is equally, he wants to know.
Equally is, of course, freely. It can be that the enjoyment of the devotee is greater than that of the Lord, although Prabhupada here indicates that the living entity is the small enjoyer. But the devotional service is so relishable that the Lord himself wants to know what is it that these devotees are relishing. So, of course, that relish is possible only by the pleasure potency of the Lord. So finally, it's the Lord who's the abode of the pleasure potency, not the living entity. There's a purport about that someplace in Caitanya-caritamrta. But in any case, the Lord is the source of the pleasure potency. The living entity wants to kidnap or somehow what should we say, take charge of the pleasure potency, but it's not his. Yeah, he gets whatever pleasure is bestowed upon him by the Lord's pleasure potency, not that he himself is independently capable of pleasure. But in the loving exchanges, the devotee, the Lord shares his enjoyment so that the living entity enjoys on an equal platform, or even, it's sometimes said, enjoys more.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna. Tulsi Priya has a hand up. Panchatattva has something in the chat. I was reminded, hearing you speak and listening to this purport, of an analogy I believe you've given, or Prabhupada has given, and you've repeated it for us. But if you're on a skateboard, for example, you want to go forward very fast, but you're limited to the strength of your opposite leg's ability to propel you thus. But if you grab onto the back of a truck, you can go as fast as the truck goes.
Yes. Prabhupada's example, of course, was a bicycle. Skateboard. This is our update. But yes, when we're connected with Krishna, then wonderful things become possible. And on our own, we can't do anything. Even the materialist, whatever he's able to do is possible by the grace of Krishna. So on our own, we're incapable.
I think I thought of skateboards because it's less energy efficient, more tedious, and a lot more work. So it drives the point home even more profoundly. Panchatattva Prabhu's quoting from Prabhupada in a conversation in Vrindavan in 1974, he says, "So any way you can deal with Krishna and enjoy transcendental pleasure, either as enemy or as friend or as son or as lover, as master, as a servant, anyway. Krishna is prepared to deal with you anyway, in 12 rasas, Akila Rasamrita Sindhu, Raso Vayasaha. In the Vedas, he is the reservoir of all pleasure, transcendental. Labdhanandini, when we engage rasa, transcendental mellow, Labdhanandini, then we get transcendental bliss." Thank you, Panchatattva Prabhu. Tulsi Priya, please go ahead.
Gurudas has something in the chat too.
Yes, but that appeared before your hand appeared.
Oh,
sorry, after your hand appeared.
okay. Well, what Maharaj was saying reminded me of, he mentioned, sometimes the devotee feels more pleasure. And it reminds me of, Prabhupada said, if Krishna wants to give you with his 10 hands, how much can you accept with your 2 hands? So in that sense, the devotee's enjoyment can be taken as greater than Krishna, because by his mercy, we are overflowing with the ecstasy of which he is the source and the abode. But Krishna assumes that role of a devotee as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and as we've seen from his pastimes, he is overflowing. So it seems that as in the position of the devotee, you're overflowing. It's more than what you can even contain, and Mahaprabhu exhibited that, with his ecstatic symptoms. It was beyond, anything that was humanly possible. And also those symptoms are signs of prema, with, different bodily changes and things like that, which, and I guess it's an enviable position. Otherwise, Krishna wouldn't have wanted to take that role himself.
Thank you very much. And Gurudas Prabhu's comment, let's see. Something you just said, Maharaj, Gurudas says, triggered a memory for me. When I was first attracted to Hatha Yoga as a new student, it of course had the Tat Tvamasi philosophy behind it. I think the book was called Richard Hittleman's Yoga in 28 Days or something like that. And I remember thinking how much more elevated a point of view about life than anything I had encountered before, and that made it attractive. This was before encountering devotees or my first book of Prabhupada's The Science of Self-Realization. And Tulsi Priya, what you were saying, that the living entity only has two hands, how can he receive from Krishna with his 10 hands giving to you? It made me think of, proportionately, the living entity can, as Maharaj says, enjoy even more proportionately because the living entity is so small. It made me think of Prabhupada's New York host, Dr. Mishra, his statement about Prabhupada, that His Holiness Swami Bhaktivedanta-ji just knocked me down with love.
On Gurudas's point, anything when we come to the idea that there's of analyzing matter and spirit, or making a distinction between matter and spirit, that becomes like a super elevated platform today. For the Krishna conscious person, that's just ABC, or even for the ordinary spiritually educated person, that's ABC. But in our mundane life, to come upon that idea is a great revelation. Prabhupada said, in a place where there's no trees, a castor plant is a great tree, a big tree. So, yes.
Thank you, Gurudas Prabhu.
Very unfortunate, Maharaj and devotees, that the material world has gotten to such a state that even a smattering of my body philosophy is grabbed onto for that reason, because that's an impetus for devotees to take up this movement so much more vigorously, I guess.
Yeah, the castor tree shouldn't be the only tree out there. The devotees have, there's a great need for the devotees to get out there so that people will see the real tree. And people will see Krishna and not just some impersonal, hazy notion.
Jai. Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you, Gurudas Prabhu. Tulsi Priya, would you like to continue with the purport?
On the other hand, wait, is my mic on? Yes, okay.
Yep.
On the other hand, when the living entity wants to enjoy by imitating the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his desire is called Maya, and it puts him in the material atmosphere. A living entity who wants to enjoy on his personal account and not cooperate with the Supreme Lord is engaged in materialistic life. As soon as he dovetails his enjoyment with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is engaged in spiritual life. An example may be cited here. The different limbs of the body cannot enjoy life independently. They must cooperate with the whole body and supply food to the stomach. In so doing, all the different parts of the body enjoy equally in cooperation with the whole body. That is the philosophy of Achintya Bheda Veda. Simultaneous oneness and difference. The living entity cannot enjoy life in opposition to the Supreme Lord. He has to dovetail his activities with the Lord by practicing bhakti yoga. Should I read the last one?
Yeah, go ahead and read that.
It is said herein that one can approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead by either the yoga process or the bhakti yoga process. This indicates that factually there is no difference between yoga and bhakti yoga because the target of both is Vishnu. In the modern age, however, a yoga process has been manufactured which aims at something void and impersonal. Actually, yoga means meditation on the form of Lord Vishnu. If the yoga practice is actually performed according to the standard direction, there is no difference between yoga and bhakti yoga. Maharaj?
Yeah, in the Sanskrit, there's a word. You have to get back up to it. Ekaterina, by one. And in Prabhupada's original translation, it was slightly more clear that it's not that the one has to practice both devotional service, apply the science of devotional service, and mystic yoga. It's ekatrena, ekaterena, by one or by the other. So either one has to practice the mystic yoga system, which Lord Kapila has described earlier, meditating on the Lord's form point by point, or bhakti yoga, active devotional service. Either way, one can achieve the abode of Krishna. We have the same sort of parallel in Bhagavad Gita in the 5th chapter. Yat sankhya prapyate sthanam tad yogair pigamyate. Ekam sankyam cha yogam cha yapashyati sapashyati. One may achieve perfection either by yoga, which Prabhupada translates as devotional service, or sankhya, which Prabhupada, I think, says it's like philosophical speculation or cultivation of knowledge. Ekam sankhya cha yogam cha yapashyati sapashyati. One who sees things as they are sees that there's no difference between these two methods. So how is there no difference? And if there's really no difference, how could we be talking about two different things? There has to be some sort of difference, otherwise there's no sense to what's being said here. So they're different, but they're parts of the same process. The Sankhya Yoga, or the mystic yoga system, is finally meant for promoting us to the point of devotional service. So either way you go, you either take this broad direct road and you get there, or you take one of the side roads that feeds into the big direct road and you'll also get there. Either way. Or it probably gives the example, you take the stairs and you'll get there, or you take the elevator, the lift, and you'll get there. So either way, you're going to the same point. And that's also the point that Prabhupada makes. It's not that but there are two different goals of the yoga system. There's the same goal, the personality of Godhead. But one gets diverted by the impersonal objective. So, ekaterena, take one way or take the other way. But we recommend, well, if by Sankhya or by mystic yoga, I'm going to come to the point of devotional service, well, why not just take devotional service to begin with? Prabhupada makes that point. What is that? Bahunam janmanamante gyanavan mam prapadyate. After many, many births of cultivating knowledge, the Gyani surrenders to me. Vasudeva sarvamiti. Krishna is everything. So an intelligent person thinks, well, if after many births I'm going to come to this conclusion to surrender to Krishna, well, let's get it over with and surrender now. Let's get on with it. So this is Prabhupada's consistent recommendation that one should take directly to devotional service. But if one takes the step-by-step method with one of the, what should we say, subsidiary processes or preliminary methods, that still he'll finally come to this point, devotional service.
John, thank you so very much. Right, Krishna. Oh, Tulsi Priya, your hand is up.
Yes, my question is, can one say that the reason it's more recommended and more direct because a person can philosophically speculate, but that's not all a person is they're not just a mind or an intelligence. They have emotions, they have desires, they want love, they want relationships. And so if you can dovetail those in devotional service, then that's obviously the end goal. Whereas if you're just philosophically speculating, what about all those other desires and needs that a person has? They're not being met, so you have to meet them some other way.
Yeah, that's true. And Prabhupada was talking about that with the Mayavadis who finally Prabhupada's analysis is very simple. You have to do something.
Mm-hmm.
There's the speculative path, the Aham Brahmasmi, all right, I realize I'm spirit. I'm not this body. But now that I'm spirit, what do I do? And for the Mayavadis, well, I come back to the false material world and perform philanthropic activities and get into politics. I work for to free my country from foreign rule. But that's why am I doing that if I've already declared that the world is false and I want to be on the spiritual platform of reality? So finally, I have to do something. And devotional service is the platform where I do something. Yanavan, when I finally become full of knowledge, Mam Prapajyate, I surrender to Krishna because that's my nature. I'm active. I'm a living being. So I have to live in relationship with Krishna. I have to act in relationship with Krishna. The same thing here, the limbs. If I realize I'm a hand, all right, great. But I can't just stand here and say, I'm a hand, I'm a hand. I have to do something. I have to act like a hand.
Mm-hmm.
Then my being a hand has meaning. Otherwise, I may say I'm a hand, but if I don't function as a hand, then I'm useless.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Maharaj,
Maharaj.
you reminded me of something when we were talking the other day, and you mentioned politics. And I was thinking I don't know, the more I hear about different types of identity politics, the more impersonal it seems to me because you always have to categorize people and label them. And Prabhupada uses the term isms. So, if you put yourself into a category, whether it's, nationality, then it minimizes you. You suddenly become just a label of your nationality or Black Lives Matters or transgender or so many different things that you reduce your identity down to this one label for the sake of politics. So it seems to me that that's fundamentally impersonal also. They think they're serving humanity, but they're really just serving labels with which they've chosen to identify.
Well, politics is meant to be purified by Krishna consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
We're not against politics in principle.
Mm-hmm.
Politics is the prescribed duty of the Kshatriyas. There has to be political activity. There has to be management of the state. There has to be the rule of law and order. So we're not against, there has to be protection of the citizens. So we're not against politics, but their politics is so stupid. It's all on the platform of, as you say, the body or some special interest group in terms of bodily identification, or just party, what Bob calls party politics. I remember when I was a kid, I had a friend, school friend. He lived about 10 minutes away from me. And at 1 year, his father ran for local office as a candidate for the Democratic Party. And after that, the friend was like always talking about the superiority of the Democratic Party, the Democratic platform, why the Democrats were better than the Republicans, why the Republicans were jerks, and so on. There's nothing to it. They were both the Democrats, the Republicans. They were both basically the same thing. But because his father was running on the Democratic platform, now it was all the Democratic platform. So it was childish. and it's still childish. As a child, he's going on like that, and as an adult, people are going on like that. I remember I always thought it was so stupid as a child. Someone's running for class president, and his platform is something like, we're going to, I forget what it was, have better meals at the cafeteria, or there's some insignificant, stupid thing, and there was no difference between any candidate for school president and any other candidate, but somehow or other the students were being trained, because this is democracy and we want to foster democracy. The students were being trained to present somehow or other why they were better and why the other students should vote for them. And it was just there was nothing there. It was just an imagination, and the candidates would throw up some really foolish thing, and finally you voted for Patty because she looked better. It was so silly, but that's what you learn in I guess that was middle school, and then they grow up and the same foolishness prevails. But you find with the Pandavas, with Yudhisthira Maharaj, their whole purpose of government is to glorify Krishna and to carry out the desires of Krishna, or to, what should we say, implement or uphold the divine order prescribed by Krishna, to see that everyone is performing their prescribed duties, to see that everyone is protected, to see that everyone has what they need, to see that no one is acting against the principles of prescribed duty, disrupting the state and its purpose, and so that everyone can live happily in this world, and at the end attain freedom from material existence. So that was the politics. That was the purpose of their politics, to ensure material stability, material needs are taken care of, and finally that we go somewhere. We go to the ultimate destination, Param Gati. Otherwise, everything's a waste. You're being a politician is a waste is useless. Your being a country is useless. Your being a citizen is useless. Your everything is useless without Krishna. And as soon as Krishna is there, the state has value. The king or the government has value. Your life has value. Everything has value. And Prabhupada's example of the zeros and the one, everything has value when Krishna is there.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. We're getting close to the end of our hour. There's a couple things in the chat. Suchara Dev has had his hand up for a while. Would you like to say something, Prabhu?
Yes, Rosie. I'll just keep it short. So the verses are speaking about the superiority of Krishna consciousness in pure devotional service, but we see how the scriptures, they bring in different processes of directly and indirectly achieving God. We also hear how Krishna sent Shankaracharya to establish Vedas at the time of Buddhism, because people are not ready for pure Vaishnava philosophy, and therefore there was a need of Shankaracharya. So, as well as uh, we see Srila Prabhupada wanted to establish Varnashram, but the Vedic society also had demigod worship. It was not only Vishnu worship. And so, if the idea of Varnashram that Srila Prabhupada or the Acharyas presented, will that also have some place for Jnana Adhikaris and Karma Adhikaris and people who are not ready for pure devotional service? Because that element was
Yeah,
always there, and
yeah. There have to be people who maybe they're just working, but they're working in connection with the system in such a way that they'll be gradually elevated. They may be Gyanis, but they're working in such a way that they'll be gradually elevated. We don't say no karma, no Gyan, but they should be. There are going to be people always who are more attracted to karma, more attracted to Gyan, but they should be progressing. So yes, Varna Ashram and the whole Vedic culture provides, all right, worship worship your demigod, but understand that's really less intelligent. You should come to the person who's the support of the demigods. But at least you're accepting authority. You're now you've made progress. It's not all up to me. There's somebody who's superior. So that's progress. But who's at the top? That's the culmination of progress.
Jai. Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you, Sucharadev Prabhu. I was going to ask if Panchatattva Prabhu could nominate our evening's closing kirtan leader.
Oh. I always wanted to get Praveen Krishna Prabhu to do, but I don't know if he would. He may not be in the position to. What about Sucharadev Prabhu?
Yes. I'll just. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhamsa Parivrajakacarya Ashtottara Shat Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhamsa Parivrajakacarya Ashtottara Shat Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Bhakta Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai नामाचार्य श्रील हरदास ठाकुर की जय प्रेम से कहिए श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि श्री गौर भक्त वृंद की जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय नवद्वीप मायापुर धाम की जय श्री क्षेत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय द्वारकापुरी धाम की जय गंगा माई यमुना माई की जय भक्ति देवी तुलसी महारानी की जय संवेद गौर भक्त वृंद की जय All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gaurang. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai, Jai, Jai. Thank you so much, Sucharadeva Prabhu, and thank you, Tulsi Priya, for the Vrindavan Darshan Arti screen share, and especially thank you again to Maharaj for being with us and giving us your association. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj ki jai.
Jai.
Hari Bol Maharaj. We could read your lips. You were muted, but we could see you.
Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
Jai.
Gaur Premanande.
Hari
Hari
Bol.
Bol.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Thank you, Panchatattva Prabhu. Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you to Supreme Krishna Kantiya. Hare Krishna.